Good day. Welcome to Clearing the Mist with Ken Hamilton. I am really glad to be here. We're going to have a show that's going to be somewhat unusual from what we usually do. Unusual, but necessary. But before we start, the you changed it up. Okay, before we start, let's go over the schedule, that's upcoming schedule. That's Clearing the Mist to me, Ken Hamilton. Vibing with Vicki Weidman on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays is Faith Matters with my friend Dr. Nasser Khan. And on Thursdays, Naz himself with Mind Your Business with Naz. Because of the nature of this show, we're going to have to make a disclaimer. And that disclaimer would explain that the views that are expressed on this show, as on all of the shows, really, that you have a guest or even the host, and the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and the guest and the host, and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of NAS 716 Business and Cultural Center, NAS 716 Studio, advertisers, or any other entities they represent. And I want to thank you for watching, and sometimes my views don't even what I say don't even, reconcile with my views on things. Sometimes I have to tell you what you need to hear. Anyway, hey, a very interesting thing happened to me the other day. I got a phone call. A fellow calls me up, and he was concerned about something that I had never even thought about, because if you ask me, Kenny, what do you know about the streets? I'll tell you everything I know about the streets right now. You want to hear it again? I'll tell you everything right now what I know about the streets. You heard it, because I know very little about the streets. I know politics, public policy, and a whole bunch of other things, military things like this, but I'm not an expert in the streets. There are people out there who know and understand these a lot better than I do, and from time to time in telephone conversations, they educate me on the things that I do not know. One of those people are Guy Lightfoot, my guest here today. Guy, we go back way back through our childhood and everything. Here's another disclaimer. He happens to be my cousin on the less than good looking side of the family.
Yes, we are.
All right, I made that part up. But Guy had an issue. Guy was a very successful, a very talented person. He sings, he plays musical instruments. He has a lot of talents of which I do not have. And this is why I enjoy speaking with him in our long conversations, because we can exchange what I know for him and what he knows for me in the various areas that we encounter in our lives. Guy called me up and he says, Kenny, I have an issue, something that I need to talk to you about. He calls me up to ask me about my feelings on legal issues. And it's appropriate for me to answer those questions because I have worked as a shore patrolman, military police in Philadelphia, and I had to bring a lot of brothers to jail, put them in prison. And it's spooky there because I had a white partner that they never saw. The brothers only wanted to beat me up because I was supposed to let them go, which was just totally unfair, and it wasn't going to happen. Though 3 did escape because I wasn't paying attention like we should have been paying attention. Not only that, but, 1982, 1983, thereabouts, I took the New York State Troopers examination. I scored 105, perfect score on the test itself, and 5 points for being a military veteran. The test is not about how smart you are. It's about how much you think like a cop. And that's what they need to find out so that they can train you on how to be a great police officer. Guy called me up one day and he asked me about some of these things, and he said because he knows that I think on the, just over the line of what is in the middle of things, because I am definitely pro-policing. I'm pro-good policing. And Guy had an issue and he wanted to know what I thought about it. Then he began to tell me something that happened to him, which I had no idea that those types of things actually happen. And so, with no more, I've told you everything that you need to know in order to get an understanding of what we're going to be talking about today, and Guy is going to provide us with some questions. One of the things that Guy had pointed out was sometimes in interrogations, cops aren't always honest and it causes consequences outside of the interrogation room. What happened?
Well, first of all, I never saw an interrogation room. I was, at the time, due to an alleged situation, I was in custody.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when you're in custody, you trying to do everything possible to get out, to make bail arrangements and things of that nature. Well, talking to my girlfriend at that time, I was able to reach her, and when she answered the telephone, she was very excited. She says, "My nephew came out of his coma," and she went on to express some things that he said when he came out of this particular coma.
How long ago was this?
Oh, this has been this has been about maybe 3 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm listening to what she had to say, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's great. So at the end of the phone conversation, the officer that was there, he asked me, I overheard part of the conversation on the phone. Would that happen to have been the incident that happened on such and such a street at such and such a date? And I was like, yeah. And he went on to explain to me that he was the first officer on the scene that particular night.
Now, this was local then?
This was local, yes it was.
All right.
And I told him...
because this goes all over,
yeah.
Local to Niagara Falls, New York. Not Niagara Falls, Ontario, but Niagara Falls, New York.
Niagara Falls, New York. Yes.
All right, go on.
Yeah. So I expressed to him, I said, yeah, I said, as a matter of fact, I saw all the police out there that night. I happened to be taking the garbage out, and I saw all the officers and things out there, and I had no idea what was going on, but I did see all the activity going on back and forth, and I left it at that. Right. Then he went on to ask me, he says, did I hear you say your girlfriend mentioned that her nephew or whatever mentioned who did this to him? And I said, well, she did say something to that nature. I said, but I'm not exactly sure, because she was so excited and I really couldn't understand what she was saying. He went on to ask me what was the name of the person that she spoke of, and I told him, I said, I'm not sure.
All right.
I'm not sure who she was speaking of. You know. So he went on to ask me a few more questions, and I'm like, well, I'm not really comfortable with this, you know, because he asked me would I be willing to talk to one of the investigators, and it's like, what could I tell them? I don't know anything about this.
You only saw flashing lights or something.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
Now, you were talking to a police
officer,
not a detective.
Not a detective.
Right.
I was a police officer, because once again, I was in custody. Actually, they had taken me to the hospital because I had breathing issues, and they took me to the hospital for treatment. And during that time, they allowed me to make a phone call, because it was a minor charge at that time, you know. So they allowed me to use the telephone to reach out to try to make arrangements to get home. So I did that, and I thought nothing else about it. I thought no more about the conversation with the officer or the situation at hand. It was just a passing thing, you know. Didn't think any more about it. Well, maybe 6-7 months later, now I'm in the holding cell at Niagara County Jail.
All right.
And all of a sudden, the guys in the particular pod that I was in, no, everyone stopped speaking to me.
What's a pod?
A pod is just a living quarters, you know, for inmates that are incarcerated.
A common area or something?
Common area in the jail, yes it
All right.
is. So, I'm kind of wondering, like, what the heck is going on, because most of the time, most of the guys are pretty friendly with me. They would talk to me, they would come to me about advice for certain things and things of that nature.
You're generally older than they are then, right?
That's correct.
Just for the record, right now we're talking to Guy Lightfoot, and he's explaining a situation where he was not interrogated
At all.
and because he had no real information to give. Any information that he had was little more than hearsay,
Right.
and it was only about what the officer might have heard tangentially as to what the conversation was going on between the girlfriend and you.
Correct.
Guy Lightfoot, go on.
So in any case, after a day or two, one of the guys from Buffalo pulled me to the sides and he says, "Mr. Lightfoot, they're saying that your name came up on someone's discovery papers for a grand jury."
Okay.
And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Just what I said. You were supposed to have told that this particular person did certain things to this other person." And I'm like, wow. And the scary thing about that, by me being a federal inmate, things like that are frowned upon very seriously in that type of setting.
Okay. Now, if you could go back just for 1 second, not everybody's going to know what discovery papers are.
All right, discovery is when you file certain motions to obtain information pertaining to your particular case.
All right.
So if accusations are made against you, and the police are bringing up charges against you, you need to know what those charges are and how they know what they know.
Okay.
So
So you're talking about discovery papers for
a grand
somebody
jury,
else.
for a grand jury.
For you?
No, this is for the
Oh,
other
the other
guy.
guy. All right,
Yes.
now I'm up to speed. Great.
Yes. So the crazy thing about it is, I would know this gentleman if he was to walk up right now. If he was walking to this room, I have no idea what he looks like. I've never had a conversation with this guy. I don't know him.
All right.
I don't know him at all. Don't know anything about him. A matter of fact, when this situation came about, that was the first time I ever heard the man's name. So once again, it placed me in a very bad situation because people get hurt behind things like this.
Okay.
They're taken very seriously.
All right.
You know.
So this is Clearing the Mist with Ken Hamilton. The mist is that, as like what Guy just said, is that there's a different society incarcerated than what you would find in church or at the supermarket and places like this. And it's a very dangerous place.
You have no idea just how
Right,
dangerous
you really
it
don't.
is.
Yeah.
This is taken very seriously.
All right.
Very seriously.
So now go on. So now your name has come up. People had quit speaking to you, and one guy was thoughtful enough to let you know what was going on.
Actually, I had two people that thought enough of me to come and let me know what was going on. And that was a guy out of Buffalo. And the funny thing about it is I had people here that I grew up around that I've known just about all my life, or I've known them because, once again, I was older than most of the guys in that particular pod. I was a senior. And it was someone from a Spanish guy from Rochester that knew nothing about me other than what he learned from conversations we had within the pod.
All right.
He was approached by some of his fellow people from his neighborhood, from their organization, and they were saying the OG in the other pod, you may want to stay away from him. His name came up on paperwork.
His name came up on
No,
paperwork.
my name. So when things like that happen, you're immediately.
Oh, okay. So in the discovery that he was doing, your name came up because of the conversation that you had with your girlfriend.
Exactly.
All right, go on. 1 second. If you're watching, you feel free to ask questions. Send in comments and ask questions on Facebook. We will read out those questions if we have the time so that he might answer the questions. Or if you're familiar with any cases like this, that if there's something that you can add, let us know. So now, your name came up in his discovery, and you're warned to stay away from him.
No, don't misunderstand me.
Okay.
Particularly this Spanish guy that who was warned to stay away from me.
Oh, he was warned to stay away from you.
He was warned to stay away from me.
All right.
Because they call it jumping on cases. Because my name came up in another person's discovery for a grand jury indictment. Now, once again, I was never interviewed for a grand jury. I never been to a grand jury indictment. I never gave a statement for a grand jury indictment.
And you never made a statement to the patrol officer?
I never made a statement to a patrol officer. As a matter of fact, from what my understanding is, the indictment read, Guy Lightfoot said this, Guy Lightfoot said that. And I can't see where I could have said anything about anyone or anybody.
Because all you saw were flashing lights as you were taking out the
That's all I
garbage.
saw was flashing lights and what my girlfriend told me, which would have been secondhand information.
Hearsay, right?
Yes.
Right.
So I had no understanding how my name came up on this guy's paperwork or his discovery for a grand jury indictment, and how my name was being used in order to secure an indictment.
Right. So now, did the police officer that had you in whatever it is down in the basement there, did he hear the conversation between you and your girlfriend?
He may have heard bits and pieces of it, you know.
But he could only heard your response to it.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
So it was,
Yeah.
okay.
But once again, it put me in a very scary situation. To be honest with you, had it not been for the Spanish guy speaking up for me, there's no telling how that could have turned out.
Absolutely.
You know?
So now, let's talk about how those things could turn out. One of the things I learned, and I learned from people like yourself, because I talk to people fully across the spectrum. I learned from literally everybody. Is that if this person believed that you had testified or told the cops who he was, then there was likely some retaliation that you had to be aware of.
Of course. I mean, I hate to think that what could have happened, I mean, because allegedly the guy was supposed to try to commit murder. You know, so if that's the case, and this is the mentality of this individual, what was to keep him from coming after me? Because I'm the reason, I would have been the reason he was indicted, and the charges were placed against him.
So if he was incarcerated, he probably had people that were close to him who would come looking for you.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be the people that are connected with him. If you have a reputation for being what they call a snitch,
All right.
you're open game. You're not wanted around. Period.
So one of the big things that I see quite often is that the people who are making the laws are not aware of what the mindset of people who are breaking the laws are. That laws are written in the minds of people who have never broken the law, anything like that, that if it was me, this is what I think would work for this person for incarceration, et cetera, et cetera.
That could be true, but then again, you also have people that are in power and say they don't like me, and
So
in
this is
order
the
to
great
take away my street credit, or as they put it,
Pit one against the other.
yes, divide and conquer.
So, in your estimation, how often do you suppose, and I know that you wouldn't know, but how often would you speculate that these types of things happen?
Well, through conversations with other people, I find out that it happens quite a bit.
You know, one of the things I'm learning, and this was after the rush of homicides happened earlier in this year, is that what happens many times is that the reason that these young boys are shooting other young boys is because they're afraid that the other person's going to shoot them. There's a lot of different factors out there. In your case, they might have wanted to retaliate against you, even though you weren't guilty of it's not that guilt is determined in court. Mm-hmm. Even though you never said anything that would indict the other person, or that could help them to indict the other person.
I take it as a mentality, win by any means necessary. You know, and don't get me wrong, because like you, I am not anti.
You're not anti-police.
No, I'm not. I am not. I hate to think what it would be like if we didn't have them.
Oh.
You know, but at the same time, there are those that, hey, don't mind doing whatever they feel they have to do to get the outcome that they're looking for.
Right.
And if that means using me, then I just become a casualty of the situation.
It's called collateral damage.
Collateral damage, yes.
Right. So now, one of the things that we had talked about earlier, and when I do interviews like this, I kept telling you, I don't want to hear too much. I don't want to hear too much because I want it to be fresh when you come out, when somebody comes and speaks about it. Is that I cited a case where if there was no consequences to the police officer who wrongly used you in order to get an indictment, then if something happens to you, even though you might be considered collateral damage, if we take this and change the situation and say the patrolman on the street, he's in his cruiser, he pulls somebody over, and I've seen this, as he was holding on, I've seen it, I didn't see it firsthand, but I saw it, in videos, where he has his hand on the car and the guy pulls off and the officer gets injured. Even if he chases this guy down and have an automobile accident as a result, whether it was a 2-party, 3-party accident, and the guy gets away, or whether the officer just loses control of the vehicle, because of the damage that happens to the officer, even though it was only tangential and not directly related to what the speeding guy did, the speeding guy is still held responsible for whatever injuries happen to the officer when the officer is in pursuit of him and lawfully so doing. So the question that comes up is if a police officer not police officer or detective, uses false information or made up information or expanded information that is patently untrue, and something happened to you as a result of that, you or anybody else, would that officer have liability as it would on the other side of the equation that some speeder caused him to have an accident?
I honestly believe that if they were held liable, a lot of this wouldn't happen. And because of the fact that they're not held liable, it's like open season. Well, why should I change my tactics when, hey, nothing is going to happen? You know, it's like this here. I'm held to every letter of the law.
All right.
If I lie to a law enforcement officer, there's charges that will be pressed against me.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the officer can do whatever to obtain the outcome that he's looking for. If that means lying, telling me a lie, so be it. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. But that's just my personal opinion. But I don't see where that's fair at all. Why is it that you're allowed to do whatever, but I'm held to the letter of the law? See,
Now, and again, you know how I think.
yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think it's fair either.
Mhm.
But then, court case after court case after court case that says that the police person themselves is not responsible for the safety of any particular individual, but just the safety of the general public.
Well, I mean, when they take that oath to become a police officer, you know, you're supposed to adhere to certain rules and regulations, and I don't see that happening.
I don't know if there's a regulation that they can't lie.
It's not. Personally speaking, no.
Yeah,
It's not.
and so we need to discuss this a little further, because I should have done some more research on this to see
Mhm.
if a cop could lie.
Oh, he can.
And, well, you know, I mean, was it under law, could they lie?
Yes, yeah, because I've researched this and I wish I could find that particular statute, but it states in the particular statute that I read that anytime that an officer is not held in check for wrongdoing, 9 times out of 10, he's going to continue to do that.
Yeah, well, that's what law of Newton said. A body in motion remains in motion unless acted upon another force.
Yeah.
Human beings do the same thing philosophically. This is Guy Lightfoot. My name's Ken Hamilton. This is Through the Mist with Ken Hamilton. Clearing the Mist with Ken Hamilton. I forgot again. Yeah, you don't have to be particularly bright to do my job. But it's Clearing the Mist with Ken Hamilton, Vibing with Vicki Whiteman on Tuesdays. Faith Matters with Dr. Nasser Khan on Wednesdays, and Thursdays, Mind Your Business with Naz himself. If you have any questions, please contact us on Facebook. If you'd like to come on the show and talk about some of the things that we've talked about, I would love to have Guy back here, because we've talked hundreds of hours off camera and everything, and I learned an awful lot. It's not so much so that I can tell you how much I know.
Mhm.
Is so that you can teach me and others who know things, don't know things that you know. So I want to have you back here at some point. If there's any pushback or anything like that, feel free to call me up and say that you want to get in touch so that we can do this. You can find me on Facebook, or you can call me don't call my phone, but you can reach me at kenhamilton930@aol.com. kenhamilton930@aol.com. You could appear on the show. We could talk about these types of issues. And the only thing that I ask is that whatever we do it respectfully, and that we understand that all of the elements in life are there because in so many ways they're necessary. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.